Okay, all right. No problem. All right, then this Jack Shaw.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Shaw is in court represented by the public defender, Ms. Harmon, and he is charged with disorderly conduct, aggravated assault on a police officer, failure to maintain his lane of travel, obstruction of a law enforcement officer, and terroristic threats. Is this going to be a prelim?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is everybody ready to proceed? All right, you've been sworn previously, right,
Yes,
officer?
sir.
Okay. All right, Ms. Ozier?
Officer, state your name for the record.
My name is Officer Carrie Carson.
And you work for which agency?
I work for Pooler Police Department.
Okay. And on what day did this incident take place?
This occurred on 7/8/2019.
And you were working as a police officer on this day?
Yes.
Okay. And that happened within the city limits of Pooler,
Yes.
here in Chatham County, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you see Mr. Shaw here in court today?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you identify him?
He is the man standing to my left.
Okay. And can you tell the court what took place?
The whole thing?
Yep.
All right. At approximately 14 hours on 7/8/2019 in Pooler, I spotted what I believe to be a disabled vehicle in the right lane of Westbrook Lane onto Pooler Parkway. I pulled in behind this vehicle because it was in the roadway and activated my lights to block the roadway for other drivers and for safety for him as well. I got out of my vehicle. I noticed that there was a man outside of that vehicle, and I walked up. I spoke with him. I asked what had happened. He stated that he had driven up on the curb and had popped his front passenger side tire. At this point, it, in my mind, turned more into an accident investigation because he had hit a fixed object and popped his tire. I asked him if he needed any assistance changing this tire, if he needed any roadside assistance, and he denied needing some. I went back to my vehicle at that time and ran his tag of his vehicle. It came back that the owner of the vehicle was suspended, but it had no information other than that. It showed the vehicle owner. So I got back out of my vehicle, went up and talked to Mr. Shaw and asked him for his driver's license at this time, in which he stated, "Why do you need my driver's license? I'm not giving it to you." He responded that officers shoot people, that's what we do, and that who he should have killed is he should have killed me. He specifically said, "I should have killed her." And I had two other officers witness this. We looked at each other and kind of was like, okay, yes, I heard. From there, I continued with my paperwork and transported him to the detention center.
Questions, Your Honor?
Ms. Harmon?
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Carson, during your interaction with Mr. Shaw, did you have your body cam activated?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you also have dash cam or no?
I do, yes, ma'am.
And to your knowledge, was that activated?
To my knowledge, yes.
Have you looked at that dash cam since this incident?
I have not.
Have you looked at your body cam?
I have not.
Now, you stated that when you came up on the scene, you noticed what appeared to be a disabled vehicle, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what about that vehicle appeared to be disabled to you?
It was attempted to be pulled over onto the curb out of the roadway, however, it was still in the roadway.
So when you say attempted, it's just because it was still in the roadway a little bit?
Yes, ma'am. That is what I had believed at the time. Also, there was a man standing outside the vehicle.
How far in the roadway was the vehicle?
The rear end of the vehicle was completely in the roadway, and cars were unable to pass in that turn lane.
Now, you did not observe the Mr. Shaw driving, though, did you?
No.
Okay. Now, you stated that you noticed a man outside the vehicle. Did the man have anything in his hand?
Not at the time when I first noticed him.
What did he appear to be doing when you noticed him?
Preparing to get out of the vehicle and begin to fix his tire.
And what side, side of the vehicle was this tire that was flat?
It was the front passenger side, so the right side.
All right. So when you made contact with Mr. Shaw, you were making contact to assist him with his disabled vehicle, correct?
Originally, yes.
And at that time, he advised you that he did not need assistance, correct?
He advised that he had hit a curb and did not need assistance changing his tire.
Now, did he advise you that he hit a curb or he drove on the curb?
He stated that he had driven into the curb, over the curb, and had popped his tire.
You stated that he said that he had driven into and over the curb?
Yes, onto the curb and popped his tire.
All right. Now, did you indicate that in your report?
I did.
Specifically that he drove into the curb?
I stated that he had driven over the curb.
Now, also, let's see here. Did Mr. Shaw advise you what led up to him being on that particular curb?
No.
At that time, after Mr. Shaw advised you that he did not need assistance, you still went back to your vehicle to run his license plate, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And why did you run his license plate at that time?
At that point, he had hit a fixed object. I was determining whether I was going to write him a citation, as well as once I had determined he had hit a fixed object, it had then become an accident investigation.
And I'm curious as to the fixed object. Is that the curb you're speaking of?
Yes.
So after you ran his license plate, you noticed that the owner of the vehicle license was suspended, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you stated that you didn't receive any information other than that the license was suspended, correct?
What I meant is I received no information specifically on him,
Specifically on
Mr. Shaw.
Mr. Shaw, okay. But when you run the license plate, does it not tell you the age of the individual?
The owner of the vehicle that is suspended, it does.
It does, right? Okay, does it also not give you a photograph?
It does. It did in this situation.
It did or did not?
It did.
It did, okay.
Wait a minute,
Now-
it did or didn't?
It did,
Did.
DID, correct?
Okay. All right.
It did.
So, the owner of that vehicle, he's around 40 years old, is that correct?
I believe so at this time. At that time, I did not have that information.
But did you not just state that you saw the age of the?
The age does come up. I did not see it.
So you did not see or you did not look?
I did not specifically look for the age at that time.
But you did see a photograph, correct?
Yes.
Now, the photograph was of let's say, a younger man, correct?
Yes.
Then Mr. Shaw, correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So at that time, you knew that this particular individual more than likely was not the owner of that vehicle, correct?
Sometimes in the pictures, they are not updated and they can be younger than what the individual is. Also, I've been trained to validate the information.
And so is your testimony that, what? Did you know it was Mr. Shaw?
I did not 100% know either way.
And at that point in time, you asked Mr. Shaw for identification, correct?
Yes.
And he provided you with his passport, correct?
Not at that time. At that time, he stated, "What do you need with my ID? And I'm not giving you anything."
Okay. And then he later provided you with his passport, correct?
Yes.
That you refused to run, correct?
No. I told him that I would run it. However, I was waiting for backup to arrive because I did not want to leave Mr. Shaw with his vehicle alone for officer safety reasons.
So you refused to run it at that time, but ran it later. Is that correct?
I never had the opportunity to run it because everything else that transpired after that event did not allow me to go back to my vehicle and do so.
Now, you stated that Mr. Shaw had a tire iron
Yes.
in his hand.
Yes.
Is that correct? And you stated that he had that tire iron over his shoulder, like
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Okay. And he approached you in a fighting stance, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And was backup on the scene at that time or no?
Originally, no.
And at that time, you did not, did you draw your weapon or you had the taser?
I drew my taser.
Okay. But you did not use the taser on him, correct?
I did not.
Okay. How long did it take for backup to arrive?
Can you be more specific?
How long did it take for backup to arrive
From the very beginning of the incident or from when I drew my taser?
when you called, period?
I cannot be 100% sure, as I was more focused on the events that were transpiring, but it was relatively quickly.
And during this time, Mr. Shaw was still changing his tire, correct?
For the beginning part, yes.
Now, did you notice anything about this particular vehicle? Let me ask you this. What type of vehicle was it?
Off the top of my head, I cannot tell you. It was a Ford Fusion. When I saw it, I noticed that it was white and it had a sticker in its rear window.
And to your observation, did this vehicle appear to sit low to the ground, or was it higher? High vehicle.
It was a normal-sized vehicle that there was nothing that stood out remarkably on that to me.
And you also stated that Mr. Shaw made several comments for you to shoot him, correct?
Yes,
Now, while he was in a patrol vehicle is when you stated that he made the statement of he should have killed you, correct?
yes,
Okay. Now, were you inside that vehicle at the time?
when he made that statement?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Just one moment, Your Honor.
I think they were dropping it. They weren't going to pursue that charge.
Oh, okay.
I
All right.
don't know what the officer said Tuesday.
Okay.
Now, you also stated that Mr. Shaw had a gun in his waistband, correct?
Yes.
At any point in time did he reach for his waistband?
There were times when he was walking by me that he was shifting, which gave certain indications that he possibly had one there and that he was aware it was there.
Right. I'm asking, did he reach for his waistband at any point in time?
He did not reach for his gun.
And Mr. Shaw is a licensed concealed weapon carrier, correct? Did you check that?
At the time, it was not known. Later on, when it was, yes.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Ozier, anything further?
Yes, just a couple questions. When you said he had the tire iron, is that correct? That was the object he had over his shoulder?
Yes.
Okay. And you drew your taser, you said for officer safety reasons. You asked him to stop,
Yes.
and how close did he ultimately get to you while he was walking towards you with this object?
When he first picked it up, I was about at his disabled tire, so I was at his front passenger tire, and he was at the front of his vehicle. So
Approximately how many feet?
Maybe 5, 6.
And he was walking towards you?
Yes, when he walked towards me, I began to make distance backwards very quickly.
Okay, and so this would be on your body cam as well?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever ask him to drop the tire iron?
Yes, I repeatedly asked him through several loud verbal commands.
Okay, and it wasn't until backup arrived that he put that down?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor?
Okay. Ms. Harmon, anything further?
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. What about the bond?
Your Honor, well, first and foremost, I would like to first make a motion
Okay.
to dismiss Your Honor, due to testimony heard here today, Officer Carson, when she arrived on scene, she testified that she observed a disabled vehicle. The tire was flat. She observed a man outside that vehicle and what she assumed to be attempting to fix that tire. She approached Mr. Shaw, asked Mr. Shaw if he needed any type of assistance. Mr. Shaw at that time denied any type of assistance, Your Honor. At that particular point in time, the stop should have ended. Your Honor, it's my argument that any continuation of the stop is a violation of Mr. Shaw's constitutional rights. Any individual, they do not have to give law enforcement information regarding their driver's license or anything like that unless it's a loitering or prowling charge, Your Honor. There was at that particular time, no crime committed or anything like that. I understand that the officer testified that she believed that Mr. Shaw had ran up on a quote-unquote fixed object. I'm not quite sure the curb is what's defined in the statute as the fixed object.
Fixture
Fixture,
is what the statute says.
Your Honor. It's also my argument, Your Honor, that at that particular time, Mr. Shaw had advised the officer that he drove his car onto the curb. There's a distinction between onto and into the curb. Into would signify some type of accident. Onto, he's trying to fix his tire. He's trying to lift the vehicle up to get better angles so that he can put the jack under the car to fix his tire. So that doesn't necessarily automatically indicate an accident. So that, for those reasons stated, I'm asking for a dismissal. If the court is not inclined to dismiss this case at this particular time, Your Honor, we are asking for a reasonable bond to be set. Mr. Shaw is 74 years old. He has no criminal history. He is a 20-year veteran. He served 6 years in the Army in Vietnam. He also served 4 years in the Navy. After his service in the military, Your Honor, he worked for the Air Force. He is currently now retired. As I stated, there's been previously no criminal activity, no police call-outs or anything like that.
He has
is
no,
a licensed.
he has
I'm
no
sorry.
record.
Yes, Your Honor. He's a licensed concealed carry weapon holder as well. So him having a gun was not a violation or anything like that either.
He didn't pull it out.
Exactly.
Agree with that. Ms. Ozier, you want to respond to anything?
I'm going to leave this to the court's discretion, Your Honor.
All right.
But the officer did want to make a statement.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. As far as the disabled vehicle, it began as a disabled vehicle. I even originally called it out as a possible disabled vehicle or an accident to the radio. When I determined that he had driven up on the curb, popped his tire, then it became an accident investigation. Through the course of an accident investigation, I am required to ask for a driver's license. Also, for someone to be driving on the road of the state of Georgia, it is required that they have their driver's license on person. That is also why I asked for that driver's license at that time, to verify who he was, if he was even legally driving.
Okay. All right. So, I think that, the court's concerned somewhat about whether or not this stop was extended beyond where it needed to be. But, I think the officer I think she's correct. She had the right to investigate whether there's an accident or not. And I think she has a reasonable time to do that. And I think that if things had gone smoothly, that would have been the end of it. I see some interesting motions being filed, but I'm going to bind over. I think it's a question of fact, and I can't decide it here today. It's not my function. I will grant him a bond. He has no record, and I'm going to grant him a $7,500 bond. Bind it over.
Thank you.
Deal with it there. Okay.
Your Honor, it was 7.5, right?
Yes, ma'am. $7,500.
$7,500 bond. Okay.
Officer Carsons, you solemnly swear that the information contained in these warrants charging Mr. Shaw with aggravated assault on a police officer and terroristic threats and acts is the true self you got?
I do.
Okay. You'll sign these.
doing an animal collection, Mr. Stephen Daniels was running earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Present this one.
What is it?
Officer Stephen, you can come up.
You want to add drug-related object, Mr. Manuel's case? Yes. All right, you solemnly swear that the information contained in this criminal warrant charging Mr. Manuel with possession of drug-related objects, true self you got.
Both was done.
There you go.
He did that.
Yeah, sure.
Give me a minute, let me finish this and I'll pull that paperwork.
All right, there's the bond.
This warrant is gonna be dropped, I don't think she's pressing the charge on the firearm possession. because
Right,
we'll
right,
find that later.
right, and I was going to keep that one. Okay. All right, yeah, I'll dismiss Ms. Harmon, I am dismissing the warrant on the firearm, possession of the weapon during the commission of crime. Do what?
Talk to her, I think it was Brown Road, let me look at it.
Yeah, okay. Let me see.
Yeah. They stay for it, I'm sorry. Was it set up?
Apparently this guy was just supposed to show compliance, and she says it's dismissed.
Robert
Pasica.
Pasica, here's his paperwork, he wasn't required appearance.
No contact with victim, commits possession of weapon, role, no violations, by the father, killed son, caution, anger management completion, is that what that is?
Yeah.
30, past 30 days and dismissed, successful completion. Okay, dismiss those.